I'm going to be straight up with you guys. This is probably my least favorite Brandon Sanderson book that I've read. But when you consider that the other ones that I've read are Stormlight Archive and Mistborn, that's not saying much. Also, the worst Brandon Sanderson book is probably better than most authors working today. Their best book. Let's talk about Elantris, though.
It doesn't matter to me why you climb these stairs, Wraithen. I do, however, wonder why you preach hatred of Elantrians when you yourself simply pity them. The oppression of the few brings salvation to the many? To profess hatred where I have none? I will never do that. Is that the way it must be then? You act as if truth were something to be influenced by persistence. One cannot separate truth from actions, Wraithen. Physically inevitable or not, truth stands above all things. It is independent of who has the best army, who can deliver the longest sermons, or even who has the most priests. It can be pushed down, but it will always surface. Truth is the one thing you can never intimidate.
Hey, what's up, bookworms and Lord Ruler Brandon Sanderson fans? Mike here today, kicking off Cosmere 2020 with our first entry, Elantris from 2005. Now, don't let the beginning little snigger I did kind of scare you off to thinking, oh, this is going to be some guy that's just going to be bashing on this book. Look, this book has issues that I'm going to talk about, but you know what? Every book has issues, and when I talk about those, and it doesn't mean that I hate the book. I definitely did not hate this book. I'm going to talk about things that didn't click for me, things that did click for me, and things that I saw that could be leading to the Lord Ruler that we know now. I mean, this is his first published work, and there were some issues. Even though I did read the revised, I guess you call it the revised 10th anniversary edition, there are a couple of changes. I'm going to go into what those are and things like that. But guys, this video will contain spoilers for Elantris. All of these reviews, some of them I will be doing a why you should read, or why I decided to read, something like that. That will be non-spoiler. But these book reviews will be spoilers because I'm going to be talking about the entire Cosmere and how it all connects together in this series. So if that's disappointing to you, I apologize. But I feel like at this point, these books are some of them almost 15 years old. It's probably to a point now where I've got to talk about spoilers. If you want some non-spoiler thoughts for this, here's what I'll tell you. I felt like this book had a little more political theory than I like in my books and my fantasy stories. If you're into that kind of thing, it might be for you. It doesn't have to be action, action, action for me with Brandon Sanderson. I love his character development. I love the way he does world building. I love his magic systems. This has all of that in it too. I just felt like the politics got a little too long in the tooth, and it was a lot of characters that I wasn't really interested in. Again, this was at the very beginning when he was first getting started, and you know what? You can see a lot of the seeds that were planted for what he ended up getting to with his politics in Mistborn, and to a greater effect in the Stormlight Archive. So you can see this as the stepping stone that kind of led to what we all know and love at this point. So yeah, I would recommend that you read the book. I will also tell you that if you've read things like Stormlight, like Mistborn, you might be a little disappointed because he wasn't quite the polished writer yet that we know now. So there are some growing pains, I think, that are going to be in this book. I also, it probably seems unfair, I think I'm always going to relate this book to having the flu because I was reading it while I had the flu. And I don't know how much that influenced my decision. That's just kind of like a little add in there. But I gave it a 3 out of 5 on Goodreads, and if for you guys who don't understand my rating schedule on Goodreads, 5 means it's an all-time book that I think they'll be reading 100 years from now. 4 means it's really great. You should pick it up now. 3 means really good. I'd recommend it to everyone. 2 means I'd probably pass, and 1 means just burn it and forget it ever existed, okay? So I get a lot of people being like, oh, you gave Liza Locklamora a 3 out of 5. Does this mean that you like this as much as Liza Locklamora? My rating scale don't work like that. Again, I just gave you my rating scale, so if 3 out of 5 is considered a bad book now, I don't know what to tell you guys. That's not how my rating scale works. So that's it. That's how I do my rating scale. And yeah, this book is good. I'd recommend that you would read it. There. That is my non-spoiler review for this book. And again, I'm going to get into the details here. So if you haven't read Elantris and you intend to, bookmark this video, read it, and come back afterwards, and then drop in the comments and talk with me, because the comments will probably be spoiler-filled as well. So let's get into it. I'm going to kind of go down the plot and talk about things as it goes along. I am going to be going off of my notes here. There are quite a few of them, because this is a beast of a book. I was surprised, really. I thought, okay, this is his first book. It's probably going to be like 400 pages long. No, in my Kindle, it was 650 pages long. The hardcover was about 600 pages long. And again, I'm reading this 10th anniversary edition. It had deleted scenes and stuff. I'll just say about the deleted scenes, you can understand why they were deleted. They didn't really add or take anything away one way or the other. But the postscript in here, I don't know exactly what the difference is, except apparently the rumor that I've heard is that this book uses Hoid by name, and originally it did not. It just said a beggar. And I'll get into who that beggar is as I go through the plot here, but the postscript is all about Hoid in here. And again, I believe that that's new. At least mentioning him by name is what is different in this from the original release. And also, I just wanted to show this real fast. Check this out in this 10th anniversary edition. Oh my gosh, where is it? Never get tired of seeing that signature. Okay, so let's talk about Elantris here, guys. Prince Raoden is your protagonist in this story, and the story really just gets right into it immediately. He is, when he wakes up, he is taken as a Sheod to the exiled city of Elantris. Now, right away, you learn that Sheod is basically a sickness where one day you get like these, your skin turns pale, your hair turns like ghost white, and you get like these black spots all over your face, basically like a sickness. And the thing that really got me immediately is that obviously this is royalty, and you are not treated any differently if you're royalty if you get this, if you're one of these Sheod, and you are exiled to this old city of Elantris that it gets into a little more in depth. But the fact that again, like I said, being royalty doesn't protect you. You go out there too, and your heart stops beating. So you are basically dead. You are the living dead at this point. So right away, I'm kind of sucked into this. I want to know more about this Elantris city. When he's thrown into this old city of Elantris that you find out has been like this 10 years ago, these Elantrians just were kind of, they came down with this sickness, and the whole city just kind of went to ruin. And now anyone who contracts this disease, as they believe it is, they are just thrown into Elantris, and kind of think of like a Escape from New York kind of thing, or Escape from L.A. You've been into, if you've watched that before. But basically, that's just where we don't want to deal with you, so we're just going to lock you in here and throw you in there, get you away from the people. While he's there, Raoden meets a man named Galladon. And he tells Raoden that since they are technically dead, any injuries that they sustain do not heal. So Raoden has stubbed his toe, and it hurts like hell, and it will not heal. I can't think of anything suckier than this. That is a terrible. You think about, okay, you're cutting something and you cut your finger and it's never going to heal. That's terrible. So imagine if these guys get really, really messed up. It's to a point where you think, okay, you got to be super, super careful here, because you fall down and break your ankle. Guess what? You got a broken ankle from now on. So again, right away, I like the premise quite a bit. But Raoden asked Galladon to help him for 30 days, and they strike like a little deal. Now, Again, guys, I just want to state before I get too far on this, I do not listen to audiobooks, so if I'm pronouncing any of the names wrong, please bear with me. This is how I said them when I read them. It looks like Princess Serene, but I found myself saying Serene. So if it isn't Serene, I apologize if I sound silly this whole video calling her Serene. So I'm going to stick with Serene because I also call her companion Ashe. Or Ashi. It's spelled like ash with an E. So I basically accentuate the E's. That's just kind of how I went with it to kind of have it more fantastical feel. So again, if I'm saying those wrong, I apologize. But Princess Serenity, she arrives from Teod along with Ashi. He is a Seon. These are like a floating magical orb kind of thing. They're like magical servants. I immediately am like, is this a Spren? From Stormlight Archive. That's what I was immediately kind of trying to look into tying these things in, but obviously not. Very, very different. But Serenity was engaged to be married to Raoden, and when she arrives in Erelon, she learns that he is dead. So she's not allowed to look in Raoden's casket at the wake for him, and she finds this, and his father, King Iadon, she finds his absence suspicious. So right away, she's onto something here. She feels like, okay, now everybody's being truthful here. And she tells her father about Raoden's death and decides to remain in Erelon. Then you have the third main character in this, if you will, and I believe his name is pronounced Wraithen. It's H. I believe the H is silent. At least it was for me. It's Wraithen. He arrives in Erelon and he plans to convert the people to the religion of Shu-Dareth, or they will be destroyed. So interesting right away. Okay, we got some zealots here that are trying to convert to their religion, or else. Wraithen meets an Arteth named Dilaf, and Wraithen's orders are to kill anyone who doesn't convert after 3 months. So he's on a timer here to get this done. Meanwhile, Raoden, he tours the city of Elantris. He learns that there are 3 gangs in Elantris, and their leaders' names are Karata, Sheor, and Eandon. He also learns that eventually people in Elantris become crippled by constant pain from the wounds they have sustained. If they get to a certain point where their wounds are just too much to bear, I believe they call them Hayod. Basically, you just have too many wounds, and you're just basically just like a rotting piece, not rotting piece of meat. You just can't move anymore because you sustain too many injuries, but yet you can't die. So you're just in, eternal torment. Let's see what else. Galadon, he can draw these things called aeons, which are some kind of writing system. At this point, you're still really kind of confused about it. Honestly, there's a lot about it I still am not totally clear on. The magic system in this is quite interesting, and it kind of left a lot to the imagination. I'll get into that in a little bit. But Wraithen requests that King Iadon that he converts to Shu-Dareth, and the king points out he already believes in Shu-Karath. They have the same god, so he doesn't feel the need to do that. This isn't quite kosher with Wraithen, but he's going to have to just deal with that as it is. Serenity, meanwhile, bumps into her uncle. I called him Kin. It's Kiin, Kin, and is invited to his home. They discuss politics and the servant revolt against the Elantrians. And I'm not going to lie, this was the point for me where the book really slowed down. I felt like it was pretty fast-paced here at the beginning. I was liking all 3 of these main characters. And then it's 50 pages of info dump. And again, I'm okay with some world building. I just felt like this was really early to have this kind of info dump about revolts and politics and more politics and more politics and a bunch of nobles that I'm really not finding that interesting, really. Is what it is. And I mean, at this point, I felt like this is where the novel really slowed down to me to almost a grinding halt. And it got kind of rough here for about 50 pages. And it's stuff I'm sure is super, super important. I know a lot of people will always get on me when I say that info dump. I don't think the info dumps are bad. I feel like info dumps this early in a story are bad. So it kind of took me out of it just a little bit. I was like, I'm really liking the stuff inside of Elantris. I want to know more about that. And it kept giving me Hrathen and Deloff complaining about these people not wanting to convert, and Serenity talking about the history of K, I think it's called. Anyway, let's move forward. Hrathen asks Deloff about Serenity, and Hrathen thinks Serenity could be a problem, and he reveals his plans to use the Elantrians as scapegoats. But Raoden learns to draw aeons that light up. He and Galladin plan on researching what happened to the Elantrians. So he starts recruiting new outcasts that are thrown into Elantris and plans to make his own gang. So you kind of got this whole West Side Story kind of thing going on here in a big, gooey, decaying city. But it doesn't take Galladin long to realize that Raoden is the prince, and he decides that's not going to let him affect anything. He asks, don't let anybody know. He starts calling himself Lord Spirit. Galladin calls him Sewell the whole time. I actually started calling my dog Sewell the other day because of the way Galladin always calls him Sewell. But Raoden finds a book written in Aeons, and he wants to translate it. Now, Raoden and Karata actually have a kind of like a parlay, and they talk about things, and Raoden decides he's going to show her how to sneak out of Elantris and into K. And once they are inside, he tells her, hey, I want you to know, what are your intentions there? Are you planning to hurt the king? And she says no. So he takes her there, and she leaves a note in the palace for her daughter. And the guard there, you actually find out that was her husband, and he didn't even recognize her. So it's kind of heartbreaking right away. But when they get back to Elantris, Karata agrees to kind of join her people with his and help, just serve Raoden and make Elantris self-sufficient. That's what they want to do. So she reveals she's been taking care of these Elantrian children too, because it was the thing about where are all the children. So she's been taking care of them. Aondin, he's one of the other gang leaders, and his followers plan to attack these Elantrian children. And Karata's followers leave to defend the children, and Raoden is able to talk them both down and get Aondin to. I don't remember what his real name is. It's like at this point there was a lot of characters' names, and I didn't want to confuse. But he remembers what his real name was, the name he wasn't using in Elantris. I just continue to call him Aondin because I didn't want to get confused. But he also comes to his side. So okay, we got 2 of the 3 groups taken care of here, and Serenity realizes that the king's hold on the throne is weak. This was to me, it kind of sounded like a commentary on capitalism. This whole caste system was like based on how much wealth that you have, and if you're into that kind of thing, again, I felt like this was a lot of political theory that was just, I don't know, that's just not my brand of fantasy. So that part, if I'm just kind of grazing over it, that's why. But Hrathen, he interrogates Diren, who is from Elantris. He's like, I want you to get me an Elantrian because I want to talk to them. And this guy tells Hrathen about the hunger and the gangs, and he's supposedly allowed to go back to Elantris, but Deloff works up a mob and sends them after Diren. And Hrathen stops them off from killing Diren, but he then has Diren burnt alive. So Hrathen decides that he must deal with Deloff, and that's kind of where he stays for quite a while here. Now, meanwhile, Raoden starts learning about the Force. At least that's how I took it. It's called Door. It's not the Force from Star Wars, but it's kind of hard to not think that. You hear the Force, and that's kind of what you think of. But Raoden thinks that Door is still working, which is why the Elantrians are alive and in some sort of limbo, right? He wants to fix Aeon Door and therefore fix Elantris. It's a nice plan, right? But Serenity, meanwhile, she plans to deliver food to Elantris, and Iadon becomes angry and starts to threaten her. And here's where, to me, I feel like Sanderson writes women really well. I really do. I think that that's one of the best parts of Stormlight Archive and Mistborn. But like he writes them really well. And I thought the Serenity was set up really good, but here's where I feel like her character arc just takes a turn that I just don't like for the rest of the book, where she just basically yells a lot. She basically shames the king by yelling a lot. Not saying that everything she wasn't yelling at him wasn't true, but I'm just supposed to believe that this guy just, the ruler of this kingdom just kind of submits to her because she yelled at him a lot, and he starts sobbing. Again, I just felt like it was a poor character turn, and all she does the rest of this book is just yell to get her way. And if that's the way I read it, if that's not the way you guys read it, all right. I don't know. I felt like her character just kind of lost all of its depth for the rest of the story because of this. But Raoden learns that Sheor, in that third gang, that she is just a young girl, and her followers worship her as a god. So that's an interesting little spin there. Sereni does think that the king, I didn't really talk about, she does think that he's using secret patches from the castle from some reason. And when she visits Elantris and the nobles for some food, she meets Raoden, who meets with her in disguise. And so he knows who she is, but she doesn't know who he is. And he tells her that he wants to distribute the food, and Serene sends, she just decides to spend Ashi to spy on Raoden. And Raoden thinks it's weird that the whole limbo thing still, that the Elantrians are caused. He thinks it's caused by some Aeon spell that has been blocked. And I don't want to say it got kind of convoluted, but I will admit there was a few times I had to go back and kind of, because he started talking about Aeon door and Aeons and Aeon door and Hoed and Teod, and there was some. It started getting, a lot of the terms started getting kind of mixed up for me. So there was some things I might have actually missed that I would probably enjoy better in a reread. So I'm not going to be able to explain them as well to you right now as you might have understood them yourself. But you basically learn that Galadon, his father, was an Elantrian. To me, you could kind of see that one coming. He knew way too much, and he could write these Aeons, right? But a Hoed, as I talked about earlier, someone who's taken way too much damage, he shows Raoden a secret pool on this mountain. And the Hoed is placed in this pool, and he just like dissolves, right? So you think, okay, they finally have a way to, self-terminate if they want to, if they don't want to live through this. It makes sense, right? I was kind of expecting like something a little more to come out of this pool, but that's kind of, I mean, it does make sense. If they do want a way out, that's a good solution, especially if you're just going to be in eternal pain and your limbs are just broken, you can't ever use them again. It makes sense. It makes sense. But this is where Hrathen's story kind of takes a big turn, and he's starting to lose his faith a little bit. So he'd ask somebody to make these potions that if you kind of forgot about, you think he just straight up ingests poison here, and he is taken by the Sheod, right? So they take him into Elantris like they would anybody else. But Raoden bribes Sheor's followers with grain, and they eventually join Raoden's group. So he has converted all these gangs to his side now in Elantris, and it's all about making it self-sufficient. That's his goal, right? But here's where things get really, really weird. I felt like the book was kind of starting to wade water there for a little bit, of spin its wheels a little bit, and then it took off here when Serene follows Iadon into the sewers, where she comes across a cult that is murdering this woman as part of a sacrifice, right? So Iadon is imprisoned, and he kills himself while he's in prison. So, we got an empty throne, and this whole time it's been suggested that Hrathen wants to put this Telrai guy, this duke, he wants to put him on the throne because, if this whole caste system is based off wealth, he has the wealth to take the throne, right? And others agree because the city guards join with him. And to prevent this, just assuming the throne from happening, Royal, a really rich merchant, decides that him and Serene will just marry, and that way they can take the throne, as a couple, right? So it makes sense on paper, but the wedding happens, and when Serene's veil is removed, the guests see that she is a victim of the Sheod. Okay, ooh. All right, so the wedding is canceled, and then all of a sudden, Hrathen is suddenly cured, and he's able to leave Elantris. And he knows that what's going on with Serene is just temporary, so he starts planning for Telrai to take the throne while she's in there, right? So she's taken to Elantris. Raoden gives her the tour, and Telrai is now the king. So it feels like all their plans are for naught, right? But Serene starts to look normal again, Excuse me. So she returns to Kay, and Serenity moves in with Ken. Now, King Telrai, he goes back on his promise to Wraithen to convert to the religion right away, right? So you have a big old shitstorm going on. Royal reveals that he has hired assassins to kill Telrai, and therefore Royal is killed for treason. Now, again, I felt like it was asking me to care about a lot of these nobles, and I just kind of found them all milquetoast in the same thing, really. So I actually got a lot of them confused, and again, I feel like this is something that Sanderson will get better in the future for sure. Telrai, he attempts to have the rest of the nobles killed, but Raoden reveals himself and everyone runs away, okay? So Telrai is killed, and Raoden and Serene talk about their marriage. Now, Raoden intends for his coronation as king to go ahead, and Raoden gives a speech in the throne room, and his illusion is broken off by Delof, but you know what? The people don't really care. They're like, okay, hey, it's Aeden's son. He's alive. We're here for this. We're here for this. And then these, I'm probably going to say this wrong, these Dakhor, D-A-K-H-O-R, Dakhor monks attack, and Delof's among them, and they take Raoden hostage, as well as Serenity and Ken. Now, there's this beggar named Hoid, right? Again, I believe that it was just listed as a beggar in this, but Hoid is told to deliver these weapons to the Elantrians. So this big battle happens. Karada gets beheaded. Galadon is wounded. Raoden is stabbed by Delof, and he becomes one of the Hoid, right? And Galadon plans on taking him to the pool on the mountain. Delof tries to kill Serenity, but Wraithen, he intervenes by busting Delof in the face, and Raoden enters the pool and exits it again, suddenly able to move. So he was actually healed in this pool, right? He draws a line of light, and it bursts from the ground, and it turns out that Elantris and the surrounding cities combine to make one Aeon. Okay? During the confusion, one of these monks, they stab Wraithen, and Raoden and Serenity try to escape. Elantrians arrive to help with the fight, and while chasing down Delof, Serenity is stabbed in the shoulder, and Wraithen just chokes Delof to death before he then succumbs to his own wounds and dies himself. With all that over with, Raoden and Serenity do get married, and in the epilogue, Wraithen's funeral is held, and they remember him as a hero. Now, in the postscript, Hoid is standing by the mountain pool. He inspects his face and hands, wondering why he did not turn into an Elantrian. And he's talking to this dark sphere that tells him that what he's done is a complete failure. He's failed miserably here, and Hoid steps into the pool and disappears. Now, I don't know how that's going to tie into the rest of the Cosmere, but I'm interested to find out, because if it's something I've read already in Mistborn and Stormlight, I have no idea about the connection there. I don't know. That's why I wanted to read this whole Cosmere thing, to see if I can find all these connections, because as far as I know, Hoid is the only one who's appeared in all these things, and this is a very interesting introduction to him, the way it is used here. So there are obviously things that I did not care for in this book, like I talked about. I feel like the good outweighs the bad, obviously. I wouldn't be giving it a 3 out of 5 and a recommend to you if I didn't feel like it was. What I kind of mentioned earlier is that I feel like this is probably my least favorite Sanderson book that I've read. I've read the Mistborn trilogy. I've read the 3 available Stormlight books, and now this seventh Sanderson book that I've read. Definitely below all those. But again, I feel like those series are hailed as amazing. So that's kind of a high bar. So don't look at that comparison. What I've told people is that if you've read those 2 series and you're going to this expecting more of the same, I'd probably temper those expectations. I told myself to not go in this with super high expectations, and I think that's the reason why I was able to get through it without too much difficulty, really. I do feel like this book took a long time to get going, and again, it's a beast of a book. It's 600 pages on hardcover here. It's quite heavy, and I really do think it takes at least half of that for this book to get going. So if you're going to say it's a slow burn, use that to the nth degree, because it is a very, very slow burn. And for me,
I felt, like I said, the political theory in this book kind of just dragged it down. I'm glad that that's something that Sanderson has gotten better with, because I found the politics in both Mistborn and Stormlight Archive absolutely compelling and fascinating. And in this, I just like, okay, it seems like every person they want to put on the throne, these people just want to overthrow them. And it's just, I didn't feel like their motive was anything better than just like, oh, well, we could do better and we can just shout at everybody and have our way. I didn't relate with the nobles in this at all. So that was probably my biggest struggle with the Serenity story. And the Wraithen story, I didn't like it the first half. Once he started to question his faith, I felt like his character got much better as it went along. And, he ended up having a very good third act, which, again, Sanderson does third acts better than everyone in the game right now. And this is no secret. Very cinematic writer, I believe. He has the three acts, and his third act is obviously always going to kind of, just knock your socks off. And again, this is no different here. I found Raoden's story to be the most interesting, but more so because it was in Elantris, and I was most interested in Elantris and what had happened there and why it was like that. And I know that sounds kind of hypocritical when I was talking about like info dumps and stuff like that, but I did just want to know more about what happened 10 years ago and stuff like that. So I felt like that it's a good debut novel for sure. I mean, I've read plenty of debut novels from fantasy authors that aren't this quality. They really aren't this in depth. And again, you could see right away, yeah, I can see the seeds for this guy becoming, the powerhouse, the Lord Ruler that he is now. But I know that he's talked about returning to this and writing sequels to it. I don't know how excited about that I'll be. I don't know. I still need to read Hope of Elantris and The Emperor's Soul. And I've heard that, he's the Sanderson we all know and love now, that his writing is better. And a lot of people have said that Emperor's Soul is one of the best works he's done. So I'm definitely looking forward to that part. But as far as returning to this world of Cell, I don't know. I feel like he's such an amazing writer now. He'll fix probably any problems that I had with this book in future sequels and short stories and stuff like that. So I'm not really terribly worried about that. But I don't know. I just didn't find this world interesting enough to really need more. But, I said that about Mistborn also, and I'm going to read Era 2 here in a while. So if it sounds like a mixed review, it's because it is. It really is. Again, I give it a good, you should read it rating, and I will stick by that. I know anything below 4 out of 5 now is considered a bad grade to a lot of people. That's not how my rating system works. So take that into consideration for this. Don't let my opinion of this book motivate you to read it one way or the other. I always say that. My channels, I am about discussion, I'm about talking with you guys about it, and I'll give my honest opinion. I'm never trying to sway you one way or the other. There is nothing more subjective than a book, guys. So this is just my opinion. If you disagree, that's okay. If you agree, hey, whatever. Let's talk about it in the comments. That's what this is all about. So book number 1 in Cosmere 2020 is out of the way. Like I said, I am definitely going to hit up next the Hope of Elantris short story and The Emperor's Soul before I move on to Warbreaker in February. So we're just getting started, guys. We've just barely kind of scratched the surface here. So I'm excited to keep going. I'm glad to actually kind of cross this one off the list, because I've always been kind of looking at it for years now, wondering if I should go back to it, after I've read like his more established works. But I'm glad I did it, and I'm glad I got to talk to you guys about it. So hit me in the comments, guys. I will talk to you there.